was born by the river in a little tent. Oh, just like that river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know change gon' come.
For 80 years, since 1937, the People's Center has been a safe and welcoming space in New Haven and Connecticut for working folks of all races and nationalities, for immigrants, for youth, for unions, and for all those seeking to create a society of peace, justice, and equality. You're about to hear the stories of some of those for whom the People's Center has changed their lives. You'll hear from Al Marder, an icon of peace and justice, who began coming to the People's Center in the 1930s as a high school student and is now its president. And you will hear from a few of today's union, youth, immigrant, and community leaders who utilize and organize out of the People's Center today. This video is an exciting part of the People's Center History Project.
In my class, which consisted a great deal of children of immigrants, first generation, and a number of them belonged to either International Workers' Order, and at that point, the Jewish People's Center, which then became the New Haven People's Center. And so I was surrounded by my compatriots who already had heard at home about the struggle for peace and justice, and they were carrying this out in our classroom. Fascism was beginning. We already began to hear of what was happening in Germany. It was very logical that when they said, why don't you come to the People's Center? It was just purchased then, 1937. And there's a youth group, a Young Communist League. Why don't you come?
This building is really more than just a building. It's more than just brick and mortar. It's what it stands for. It's the ideas that have come out of here, the struggle that has come out of here. You know, the fight for progressive ideals and social justice.
It's been a place where all people come together and feel welcome, promoted to feel as one. This was always a safe place to bring those opinions that were apart together to move forward, to continue to build the movement.
An injustice to anyone is an injustice to everyone. And from that point of view, workers who don't have a voice at work, people who are being racially profiled, young people who don't have opportunities, the environment that's being destroyed, all of these, the world that's in danger of nuclear annihilation, are all connected. Because if anyone is being hurt, everyone is being hurt, and we all have to join together and figure out how we resolve those issues, how we act collectively to make change.
New Growth Outreach Ministries didn't have a place to worship, and Bible study was my pastor, Betty Marks, my mom, and we actually had a place to hold our services and Bible study. And the People's Center became a tremendous blessing to us to have somewhere to call home. To me, in the movement, one of the most important things that could happen is for young people to actually feel confidence and empowered. And through the People's Center, there was an organization started. They hold a meeting here every Thursday, the New Elm City Dream.
The New Elm City Dream in the Connecticut Young Communist League has been so inspired by a generous, active leadership. You are paving the way for the youth of Connecticut to stand up and fight for our rights within our neighborhoods, schools, and our right to work at a good job.
which, 3 or 4 of my children had the opportunity to not have me be in their presence and have their own take on how to lead and how to organize.
The People Center is the center of peace organizing in the state of Connecticut. So this is an incredibly important institution for the peace movement in Connecticut and actually around the country and around the world.
Tremendously important to me to be in a community of many generations of people who were like-minded, who looked at the world in the same way I did. The worst thing really is to feel despair and hopelessness. And when you're aware that you're in a community of people who are working towards similar goals, who are outraged in the same way you are, it gives a lot of strength, especially to young people.
The People Center is way out in front of the situation that we find ourselves in. Because there's a number of people in this city, around the country, that are getting themselves all in motion to resist. But what the People Center have called us to do is to dream before there ever was a Trump, to think of things that we wanted and to have a commonality, unity, to come together to resist the sense that we're going to go backwards, but basically we're resisting only to continue to dream and to dream big and do the work that make those dreams come true. And when you have a right atmosphere in which to do that in, it makes it more possible. And the People Center is that.
Considering what's going on with politics today, with the sharp turn to the right, with the Trump administration assault on people's rights and on social justice.
All of the things that people need to live are the reason that we struggle for peace. Peace is justice, and this connection between peace and justice was made for me right here in the New Haven People Center.
Graduate teachers are trying to be recognized finally after 25 years in Local 33 to be our sister union on campus, and the People Center has been there. We had an occupation and a fast. The People Center was at every single action, every single event, every single rally. At May Day, for example, there's all these groups that the People Center has spawned that come together, and it's just beautiful to see what an influence they've had everywhere. I feel really lucky in this city that we have an institution which has this historical memory of all the struggles. There's like a wisdom that they bring because they've seen hot times, they've seen cold times, they've, struggled through very difficult periods in history and survived. And I think there's a lot that they bring and teach us about how to do that. The People Center is always kind of stepping back and celebrating what we are doing as a movement, recognizing people or having, a spoken word reading night, understanding that you can't do this work if you don't celebrate your progress. And so it's really just a beautiful place where you could have, spoken word poetry one night and the Elm City Dream a different night and an award ceremony another time and, some learning happening. And that, it just feels really unique. Like we couldn't do all of the worker organizing that we do if there wasn't this parallel organization supporting.
Well, the People Center is the place for the immigrant community, and not just the immigrant community, the Black community is here, different communities, but here's the center where we plan demonstrations, where we had planned and strategized different aspects. I remember when we was volunteering our time to get the municipal Elm City ID card here in New Haven. Here is where we strategize, here's where we share our ideas, put together, and then we make plans, and then we go out, and then we get stuff done.
2 years ago, the United Electrical Workers, UE, brought to New Haven a group of Japanese trade unionists who had come to the United States to participate in demonstrations around nuclear weapons in New York City. And this group came to New Haven, and we organized here with the labor movement and community movements many of their activities.
Since 1984, and the People Center was pivotal in the formation of Local 34 in New Haven, the clerical and technical workers at Yale. They held classes off campus when the union was on strike, and they moved courses off campus. And the People Center right here was where some of those classes took place. And members of the People Center were part of our first negotiating committee, and went on strike, fought for the union.
Without the People Center, we will not have like Unidad Latina in action right now. So I think that's one of the things that is very important to recognize the role of the People Center, not just for the Latinos, but also historically has been working with immigrants for many years.
In the center itself was the home of the International Workers Order, and this was the Jewish branch. In New Haven, there was Ukrainian Hall, which is Ukrainians. There was the Lithuanian Hall for the Lithuanians. There was the German branch, and this was a grouping of international solidarity. And it was there, too, that this young fellow learned the meaning of international solidarity and the rejection of narrow nationalism, and realized that the movement I had entered was international in scope, that people everywhere were working for the very same goal.
We meet here every Monday at 7 p.m. We have been meeting at that schedule for the last 3 years. So we had like people from all kinds of backgrounds and ethnicities come in and getting together as a community and talking about their issues.
I came here 4 years ago when it was New Elm City Dream, and it was a lot of youth involved, and we always thought about doing other different things. Each meeting was a different topic, and we also had meetings on Saturdays too. We all sit down and discuss what plans is and door knocking, like as a group. As a result of that, we end up doing a lot of marches and campaigns for violence and jobs. And we also did a lot of youth surveys a couple years ago, which we still are starting back up now.
I remember during lunch periods coming over here to this building, talking to workers, trying to organize the hospital. I met a couple of guys at the hospital. One was Gary Benenson. The other one was Craig Gaudier. And we met at this building, in this building, Sid Taylor. Sid Taylor was the lead of the Communist Party here in Connecticut. And we learned so much from him, how to organize, how to talk to workers. And that all happened right here.
My soon-to-be friend and comrade, Sid Taylor, was the first organizer for the CIO in the city of New Haven. And I became one of his first recruits. New Haven was a citadel of industry. Many shops, amalgamated clothing workers on, where we would be handing out flyers every morning. And then I would go to school. The workers were beginning to unite for the first time for better wages.
The organizing drive for Yale New Haven Hospital started right here in this building. We would have our chapter meetings here. We would have parties here, Christmas parties, dances. When we got here, we were family. We took our first strike vote here in this building. In 1984, we voted to go on strike, and there was a lot of anxiety and tears in this room at that time. We had a group of workers that were unable to walk the picket lines, so they stayed here, and they worked in the kitchen, and they cooked food. They cooked breakfast, they cooked lunch. And I can say that even though I was on strike, walking that picket line, I actually gained weight during that period of time. The food was so good.
Even at the very beginning of the People's Center, they were meeting here in the 30s to discuss the rise of fascism in Europe.
And we organized the Connecticut Conference of Youth and the New Haven Conference of Youth, where we brought together young people from the churches, from the social clubs, from the unions, in a common struggle against fascism, which was blossoming. And this was what we called the United Front, trying to bring together everyone on a common program.
Wow, that was so phenomenal to me.
Around 2001, the complex was sold to someone who was not interested in keeping the HUD renters subsidy. So many of us were going to be facing huge rent increases, and some people, for example, the elderly who originally had children when they lived there, but now were living alone and had like 3 bedrooms, they were going to be forced to be moved out. But we came to the People's Center to find, which is the only place that we could meet, because in the trade union apartments there was no community room. So this building offered a place for us to meet as a community and to express our concerns and our worries and find out what our rights were. That was a very important part. We had a lawyer, her first name was Barbara. She met with us here and assured the senior ladies that were once single mothers and their children had, left the coop or left the nest, that they did not have to move, that they were entitled to, since they were in their 60s now, to be able to stay in their apartments should they choose to. This building was used also to help form the only union that exists at Yale New Haven Hospital, which I think they have to be very proud of, because having a union in that hospital is unique. And this place made it happen. They offered a safe place for workers to meet with organizers and strategize and to come up with a plan to eventually have an election for a union, which they won.
Joelle Fishman made this space available for us as a community to meet, and we had several meetings. They were here as a resource, and I also got to know neighbors better as well, because it was like a community setting.
I started doing the African American competition in February, and that was the best time of my year, because I entered a competition and I wrote a poem, and it was about jobs, and it was an awesome poem.
Past, present, and future. It's the #1 place where people come together and organize.
This space right here is they're open with open arms. We used to have First Fridays here, First Friday Cafe. We'd have performances, bands, whatever, every first Friday of the month. And that had stopped happening, and Joelle said, hey, Bob, you want to bring some poetry here? And Free to Spit, I had already started Free to Spit back in 2004. And that was my baby. So I was like, I don't trust Free to Spit anywhere. But when Joelle said, bring a venue here, I was like, Free to Spit is perfect for this venue, because the open armness, the history, and it's created a lot of leaders in the community. The New Elm City Dream, and they're out here and they're fighting for jobs for young people. And they're not just fighting for young people, they're fighting for every people. But they're saying we're here. We want jobs. We don't want to be on the streets. We want to stop crime. We want the guns, people to put the guns down. So these young people are actually doing stuff, and they're organizing in their own communities as well. So that I would say I'm proud of.
And all this began to add to the atmosphere of the Cold War. The anti-Soviet propaganda that Russia, who was an ally for 4 years of the U.S. in the fight against fascism, now became the enemy. But equally important was that the attacks on the Soviet Union had to be duplicated, replicated here in the United States. And so the Congress passed the Taft-Hartley bill, which was aimed at the unions and aimed at all the militants who had been organizing the trade union movement for better wages and better conditions, were forced out of the leadership of the trade union movement. And soon, our country was enveloped, frankly, in the McCarthy atmosphere. And our Poor People's Center, for several years, was empty. People were reluctant to come to the People's Center at that point, for fear of what would happen to them in their jobs, in their careers.
The People's Center has always been a place for unity, and it had the first black and white theater group, it had the first black and white basketball team in New Haven, and this is a time when capitalism had its advanced, well, it's been advancing, but its whole goal is to divide people and to separate us from each other. And this is such a precious place because it's one place where we say we're going to be all together, no matter what your background is, your neighborhood, your race, all of those things, that we have a common goal to fight for equality.
One of the things that we did at the People's Center at that very early stage was there were no bus drivers, African-American bus drivers in Connecticut. Today, you take for granted. It doesn't matter who's driving the bus. But at that point, there were no African-American bus drivers. We conducted a campaign for African-American bus drivers at Connecticut Transit, and we won. Another campaign that we conducted. There were no African Americans on the railroad, except those who worked on the tracks. There was a job, we learned about a job on the railroad for selling peanuts, popcorn, and Cracker Jacks. There was a young man, a young person, Jimmy Gibbs, who had come to the center and had been associated with us. And we said to Jimmy, there's an opening. Not only is there a job, but you can make a contribution. Well, the end story was Jimmy was hired, and he was the first African American to work on the, at that time, New York, New Haven, Hartford Railroad, other than those working on the tracks.
The future of this building is in the younger people, the youth, and a lot of that is happening now here. You know, in 1969, we were the young people, and we were mentored by people like Sid Taylor and Al Motter and others. And now it's our turn to bring the younger generation along.
The number of leaders that was encouraged or created through the opportunity to have this place, some of the events that have happened in the past, it really promotes me to dream big about the roles the Worker Justice Center held here. And whenever there's a crisis in the community, even with the fights through immigration and the fights about joblessness, the New Elm City Dream led this city, led New Haven Rising, led this community, that there is a jobs crisis in the city. And it took us a while to get onto it, but we followed them. And basically that idea was born right in these walls.
In these times in history where we had this administration that's going to be more hard on the immigrant community and all the communities of color, I think the People Center is going to play a crucial role here in New Haven to be the space for the people to meet and to organize and to fight back.
Is that I see a bright future because the young generations, it's time for them to start taking leadership roles in the different struggles that the People Center really gathers. And I see them taking the lead, and I see them continue in making sure that this is not just a building, that this community center stays like this for so many years more.
It's more people working together and people fighting together have a secure future for their kids and their loved ones. And I see more people fighting against violence and getting more justice for what they see as right.
Efforts from that period, which affected the People Center, has taken a long time to recover, to establish that the left and the Communist Party and those associated with it had a contribution to make to the struggle for justice and peace.
I think the People Center is just getting started thanks to Donald Trump. I think that they have, his presidency has inspired a lot of people to try and fight back against a lot of his intended changes for our society. He wants to revolutionize or change or get rid of Obamacare. His Republican friends and himself have always been after Social Security. They've always wanted to privatize it, and we are certainly not going to stand for that. We're going to fight that with tooth and nail, and this is a place where we can, again, organize, strategize, and come up with a plan to mobilize people to fight back against those kinds of changes in our society, because we're not going to stand for it. And the People's Center stands for fighting back, for resisting.
We have to be able to develop way beyond where we are. We have to grow far bigger than we are. And I don't know how it can happen without the kind of hub that the People's Center represents for the city of New Haven and the state of Connecticut.
Now we need them more than ever to bring the kind of wisdom and insight about keeping this struggle going in difficult times, and to do so joyously. I think that's something that they do so well, to bring more people in all the time, to always be growing. It's amazing to me that the People Center has been growing and organizing for so many years in such difficult circumstances. So I think they provide a real source of inspiration for all of us organizing at the same time.
And being able to go out and have my voice heard, and whether it's local, whether it's in Hartford or in DC or wherever. So I'm happy that there's a place that I can go to and at least get information, or just other people to voice things to.
The People's Center is more like a home to anyone that needs sanctuary in the city, and if you have a problem, this is a good place to come and try and solve it. You'll find help here.
When I met Sid Taylor and understood how to expand on my ideas and my progressive values, he sort of put the purpose in my life, and that all happened here.
I found that it was easier for me to participate if I had something actual to do. If I could take tickets at the door for an event, for example, or help out with the wonderful holiday bazaar that Pam organized and did for so many years, where she collected all sorts of beautiful clothing, cloth, books, records, jewelry, whatever, to sell to raise money.
I can define these criminals in one line, even Stevie Wonder pointing them out in the lineup. Get the cuffs. They murdered that man in cold blood. That's that old Southern Texas Ranger, shoot 'em up, cowboy blood, calling us boys. Try busy subway station. New Year's Day, line them up like runaway slaves. Put an unarmed man on his stomach, hands on his back, cameras rolling to get an Oscar. As young bucks watch as black entertainment dies instantly. Records broken. That's it.
The African American Freedom Trail quilt to illustrate all the sites on the Freedom Trail in Connecticut. The idea was conceived, I think, in 1995, and by 1998, the different sites were given instructions to make a square for this quilt. And I was really honored when Joelle asked me if I would do it, because I felt like here was a way that I could contribute what I was most comfortable doing, working with my hands in some way, to the meaningful history and the present of the People Center. The People Center was chosen to be on the Freedom Trail because of work that was done here, mainly for integration of a local basketball team, integration of a community theater group. So on the quilt square that I made, it's illustrated so many activities and projects and drives. I included not just hire Negro bus drivers, union yes, right to organize, things like that, the baseball, integrate baseball and basketball. But I included many things: equal pay, the struggle for the 8-hour day, people before profits. It meant a huge amount to me to be able to make this square and have it illustrate all the different activities that have taken place at the People Center at that point, and many of which have continued or we've built upon that.
This particular quilt that's behind me is something that I did. At school, I did more paintings, I did sculpture, I did printmaking, I did those sorts of things. But when you're creative, it's wherever things lead you. And so, but that quilt I made, of course, the references Dr. King and Unity and things like that. And, you know, did a bunch of research, pulled out a bunch of his quotes and included that. I try to express pride in our African culture, like any day, every day, you know.
I wish every city in the United States had a People Center. It could make such a difference in what's happening in the country today, and that New Haven and the people here should be so proud of what comes out of here. We've grown, like the Amistad Awards has grown to be such an event that it outgrew this building. And now it's at other venues. Black History Month is now in Hartford.
I'm excited about the sort of resistance, but I want to encourage people to follow this model that we're only resisting so that we can continue. We're not on defense. We want to be on offense, to have this city and the rest of the world to be a better place for people to live. And basically, this is the center of it right here at the People Center.
We don't have to settle. Capitalism is based on greed, it's based on war, it's based on inequality and racism. That's in the fabric of capitalism. So we don't have to be limited to think that our future has to be in that orbit. What is new? What is possible? How can things be changed so that we can really have equality and peace and justice in our community and in our world? And so those principles really have guided this building which has passed on from generation to generation, all volunteer, through those years in order to be able to stand up. It prepares this building to play a very important role today when all of our rights are on the chopping block. The People's Center is prepared to play its leading role today as it has throughout the generations.
This is where I've met people who I have tremendous respect for. Joel, Al Marder, the Marsalkas back in the past, the Eakins, so many other people, Sid and Ann Taylor, who have put and continue to put huge amounts of energy and thinking into building the People's Movement. It's an incredible institution. A brick building that's 150 odd years old can represent so much to the people of this community.
Our country has become an imperial force. Not a day goes by without being engaged in war. But we have to insist that the policies have to begin to change. That is our responsibility. I don't think there's a more gratifying way of spending a life than in the struggle for peace and justice in our country.
New Haven, Elm City Youth or something, and I think they're going to be the next generation that takes over the fight from us oldsters. I'm already 65, and you know, Joel's mother's in her 90s, and you know, a lot of our seniors aren't going to be here. I might not be here 10 years from now, who knows? But it's wonderful to know that we have teenagers that are coming here fighting for jobs. We have teenagers that are coming here and cutting their teeth on entertaining each other, staying off the streets and sharpening their skills as poets, spoken words, dancing, or even painting. I think this is it's a seminal place where a lot of creative things are going on and a lot of political thinking is going on, and training of a new generation of activists. So the People's Center is vital to New Haven.
One day during the very dismal part of the hospital organizing campaign, and having a celebration to remember what that fight had been like, to know that you can sometimes lose, but you keep going anyway. That's one of the memories that stands out most to me. Or hearing Edie talk a few years back at the awards, for the Amistad Awards, talking about her history of organizing, going way, 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 way back, and talking about that tradition for all of us. One of the things I appreciate most is that every once in a while, you know, one of our leaders in the union, one of our, you know, executive board members or rank and file committee people will be particularly up on things, or particularly enlightened, and you know, as I get to know them, it turns out like, oh, of course, like they hang out at 37 Howe Street. Well, that makes sense. So there's this way in which Joelle has nurtured a number of our leaders alongside our work with them to really strengthen our organization and to bring like a radical education about, you know, history and the struggle to our own work.
Being involved with the cultural celebrations, African heritage celebrations, we've had so many great speakers here, you know, people part of the Communist Party that offer a particular view, or people that believe in equality and, you know, the whole notion of community and socialism, but in a positive way. So I kind of appreciate that that there are people that understand what humanity means and understand what equality and are not selfish people, but are selfless people. And I enjoy the company of people like that.
We're the new wave of the immigrants here in New Haven. I think this a new wave of immigrants from Latin America came in big numbers in the 1990s, and I think, you know, with the history of the People's Center being founded by immigrants back in those days, I think it's very symbolic that we came and they opened the door for us, and now this is our home. So that's something that is very important for us, you know, in a symbolic and also in a real ways.
The meaningful results for the struggle for a diverse community, not just in New Haven, but people from all over the country and over the world have come to this place to show their culture, to show the struggle, to show the different backgrounds. So this is a magical space for people to come together and to really move forward with for building a grassroots movement.
The People Center has changed me a lot over the years because before I came, I was always getting in trouble and I was shy and I didn't like speaking at all. But now that I joined here, after 4 years, I bettered myself in everything on speaking and how to talk to people and getting people involved. So I just want to say People Center changed me a lot.
I'm also very grateful to the People Center. It's been a home for me throughout many years and many struggles, and I've always felt safe here. And then when we started doing the youth organizing, I think a lot of the young people that we got to meet and some of them already be coming here, but they feel safe here as well in a world where there's a lot of uncertainty and sometimes not as much safety as there needs to be. So it's a very special place.
We all should be conscious of what we have. We should all be supportive in the movement and the work that we do day to day, financially, all the ways that we can to have the People Center to continue to be the best place it could be to bring people together. I'm up for that. I'm excited about it. And I think the future is great and grand. And we do have a dream and we're willing to do the work to make those dreams come true. I'm very thankful for the People Center.
To honor the People Center at 80, come by and get involved. If you have stories or photos to share as part of the People Center History Project, please bring them over. New Haven People Center is an all-volunteer 501c3 organization. Financial contributions toward restoration and operation of the building, which was erected in 1851, will be appreciated.
It's been a long time coming, but I know change gon' come. Yes, it will. Yes, it will. Yes, it will.